Alright, so we're going to flip this bike. What we're going to do is go through each component separately, probably make a video about each one, and then at the very end we'll show what it'll look like on Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp, go through the pricing, and then just see how much we'll make. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take off the front wheel. You can use a bunch of different things, open-ended wrenches, crescent wrenches. I have this little bone style tool here with a bunch of different heads on it. So it's a 15 millimeter, so we're going to take that off, and then you're going to also want to disconnect the brake. Alright, so we remove the front tire from the bike. I've deflated it so that we can get the actual tire off. You can use a flathead screwdriver, there's other things you can use, but really just get a good set of tire irons here and they're going to help you out immensely. Alright, so you put the one end of the tire iron under the lip and you pull it over, and then most of them have this little hook and it helps you hook it onto the spokes. That'll hold it in place while you go around the entire edge. Alright, now that I got the tire off, we're going to inspect the rim. There's supposed to be rim tape here, and that protects the tube from the actual ends here of the spokes. So if you have it, you can put the rim tape. You could buy them on Amazon pretty cheap, but you can also just use electrical tape, and that's what I'm going to use here. Alright, now I've added the electrical tape as the rim tape, so now you can see everything's covered. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take apart the axle here so that we can grease the bearings and clean the races. I'm going to use these crescent wrenches here. There is a lock nut that goes on top of the cone, and then that's what holds everything together. Typically what you want to do is make sure your axle is symmetrical. If it isn't, then you're going to want to take note of how many threads are on each side, or just take it off from one. So what I'm going to do here is get it loosened. And then what I like to do is just do from one side only. In this case, I'm going to take it off from this side. And then if you're unsure, you should just always assume that it's going to be loose bearings. You want to be in my video?
No.
You keep coming out. Alright, so third time's the charm. Somebody keeps interrupting me. But I'm removing the cone here. We've already removed the lock nut. The cone is what pushes against the bearings, and then the bearings push against that and the inside of the hub. So you can kind of see it here. It's a little conical in shape, that's why it's called a cone. There's a bunch of grease on the inside of it. And then on the inside of the wheel here, you'll see that they're loose bearings. So that's why you want to be very careful when you take these things apart. You don't know what's going to come out of it. So I'm going to hold the bottom axle here, and I'm going to turn it upside down, try and shake them out. If you have a magnetic tool, you can use that as well. You also want to keep track of how many bearings there are. So I'm going to set this down very gently. Take these bearings. And then I have a magnetic tray here. I'm going to use a magnetic tray. Try and pick those up. You can get them sometimes on the bottom. Should really get a magnetic tool, but this is what I got right now. You can also use tweezers just to pluck them out. Again, you want to keep track of how many you have on each side. Typically on these cheaper bikes, they're going to be the same on both sides. It's usually an odd number. So 3, 6, this one had 9 on both sides. You should probably also wear gloves, but I like to get a little dirty. And then with all the bearings out, we're going to double check here. You can see inside the race. Alright, so we're going to clean the inside of the races here. Just going to use an old microfiber. You can use a towel, paper towel. Just want to get it nice and clean. Also going to feel the inside to make sure it's not pitted. If it's really bad, you're probably going to want to just get a new wheel. If not, I mean, most of the time it's okay. But especially these cheaper bikes, there's little to no grease initially anyways. So you're going to want to just put new grease or put some type of lubricant down there if you can't do this type of operation. So going to get it all cleaned up. Then what we're going to do is wipe down the axle, get that cleaned up, and then we'll put it all back together. Alright, so now that we got everything cleaned, what we're going to do is we're going to repack the bearings. And so what I have here is a mini grease gun. I'm going to just shoot a bunch of grease here on the inside. Try not to spill outside. And we're going to take the bearings and start putting them in. Like to work on a flat surface here just in case anything falls through. It'll just fall through to the bottom. I think I miscounted earlier. This one actually has 10 ball bearings. And it's also easier to use tweezers, but I don't know what happened to my tweezers. Like I mentioned earlier, if you have different number of bearings on each side, make sure you keep track of which side you're on, how many bearings go there, which direction it was on the bike in terms of the side, if it was the drive side or the non-drive side. So I'm going to count them again here, 10, and I'm going to make sure I have 10 over here. So 3, 6, 9, 10. So that's good to go. Next one I'm going to do is drop the axle in and carefully lift it up. So now that cone's holding those in place, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So this is a little easier, don't have to worry about them falling through because now the axle is going to keep them from falling through. Just put those in. And then you can move the axle a little bit to help you distribute them. They will fall into place once you put the cone. So I have all those in there. Now I'm going to take the cone, conical side down, and we're going to start threading it on. Alright, and I'm going to turn it all the way till I can't turn it anymore, and then we're going to want to back it out. So you want to back it out so that the axle actually moves, but you don't want any play. So it's very hard to show, but it is bouncing a little. So you're going to want to just barely turn it until there's little to no play. You can have a little bit because the wheel nuts are going to tighten down on it. Then what you're going to want to do is we're going to lock and secure it in place using the lock nut. So the way this works is the lock nut holds the cone and the cone won't move anymore. So it's going to add a bunch of pressure to hold everything in place. This can be a bit finicky, so you're going to want to just play around with it until you get it right. So you're going to put it right up against it, check for play, still pretty good. Then what we're going to want to do is tighten that cone using a cone wrench. I think this one's a 14 along with a crescent. So the crescent's going to lock the lock ring, and then the cone itself is going to be locked with the cone wrench. It's probably a 13. I actually didn't measure it earlier. Okay. And then we're going to hold the cone and then tighten the lock ring, or lock nut I should say. And now we have a smooth turning axle. So I'm going to spin it here. Nice and smooth. Looks nice and true. And it's pretty much good. So then we'll put the rest of the wheel back together. Alright, so now that we got the rim done, what we're going to do is put it all back together. What you want to do is put the rim one lip in all the way around. You can see it's loose, only one, and then on this side it's fully accessible. And that's where we're going to actually use to put the tube back in. So I'm going to locate the hole. It's here. I'm going to pull this down and put it in, and then work our way around the tire. And once you have that, then what you're going to want to do is work opposite the valve stem. And just push the lip under. Once you're about halfway through, flip it. And make sure that the valve is centered. And then now what we're going to do is pump it up. I didn't check this tube when we first got it, so it might need to be replaced, but the back one was good, so we're just gonna, hopefully this one will be too. These are usually 40 to 55.
Yeah.
All right, so the tire is all done. We're putting it back together. We'll wash it and probably put some tire protectant on it later. Axle is really good. Show it probably when we do the brakes and everything, but really nice overall. Can be done pretty quickly, and we'll do the rest of the bike here in the next couple videos.